pandemic have received similar notices. Colorado, Pennsylvania, Ohio, they've also begun sending out overpayment letters. Ray Burke is a legal aid attorney in New Hampshire. He says overpayments happen for a variety of reasons. Sometimes people apply for programs that they think they're eligible for but aren't, or they make honest mistakes filling out the complicated forms.
Maybe they don't have the specific earning statements they need at the time, or maybe they're limited English proficient and they're trying to navigate an online application that's in English.
And state unemployment offices are under the gun to process applications quickly. Rich Lavers with New Hampshire Employment Security says the goal is to keep the system moving, especially during a pandemic and recession.
And so we don't want to allow the desire to have perfect paperwork or a seemingly endless fact-finding process get in the way of getting money out the door.
So states approve benefits, but then weeks or months later, new information may come in, updated payment histories, or a discrepancy from a former employer. In normal economic times, overpayments were a fairly common occurrence. Now, states are trying to process a huge wave of applicants. There were also new programs launched during the pandemic to reach more people. In short, a complex system got more complex.
And naturally, there are going to be mistakes made. I mean, states are basically building the plane as they're flying it.
This is Michelle Evermore with the National Employment Law Project. She says some states are still so backlogged with applications that they haven't even begun reviewing for overpayments. It's not clear how many of the more than 30 million Americans who received benefits this year may be impacted. In most states, you can appeal an overpayment, and if it's ruled that the applicant did in fact make an honest mistake or that person was qualified all along, the debt can be waived. That's what happened with Stephen Ordway. He was able to prove that his new restaurant had already opened when the pandemic struck.
Unemployment plays a pivotal role in people's lives right now, and the last thing that you want to do to an individual that needs that money is to strip it all away.
With his appeal done, he's back focused on his new restaurant. For NPR News, I'm Todd Bookman.
Support for Planet Money comes from Progressive Insurance with the Name Your Price tool, offering a range of coverage and price options to choose from. Now that's Progressive. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
You're listening to All Things Considered.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working together to create a just world where all people have access to renewable energy, clean air and water, and healthy food. On the web at theschmidt.org. From The Little Market, offering artisan-made goods and home decor with a commitment to fair trade. A nonprofit founded by women to empower female artisans in marginalized communities around the world. More at thelittlemarket.com. And from the Lemelson Foundation, committed to improving lives through invention in the U.S. and in developing countries, and working to inspire and enable the next generation of inventors. More information is available at lemelson.org.
Comcast. Over the last decade, Comcast has connected 4 million students from low-income homes to high-speed Xfinity Internet. And now they're creating lift zones by providing Wi-Fi to 1,000 community centers to turn them into safe places to study, so more students can be ready for anything.
2020 is on track to break a turnout record set more than 100 years ago. The election will determine how politics is practiced and say a lot about the direction of the country. I'm Jen White. Join me for the latest as America's changed political landscape starts to take shape. Next time on 1A.
Tomorrow at 11 here on WJCT News 89.9.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Clear skies overnight, lows in the mid-50s inland, low 60s at the beaches. Mostly sunny and breezy Wednesday, highs in the mid to upper 70s. Same forecast Thursday.
The polls have just closed, and now it's time to count the votes. Good evening and welcome to WJCT's special live extended coverage of Election Night 2020. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Melissa Ross, and we are so pleased to be with you on this historic evening as we take in the returns unfolding in Florida and across the country, and we learn who will lead this nation for the next 4 years. We want your calls tonight as we bring you local, statewide, and national numbers, along with our partners at NPR and PBS. Give us a call right now. The number to join us is 549-2937, and share your thoughts about this incredible time we are all living through. Let us know who you voted for and why. And we want to hear what your voting experience was like. We are live on the radio, of course, but we're excited that you can also watch our special coverage right now as well on our live video stream. It is streaming as I speak at our WJCT Facebook page. We'll get into all of the races, issues, and candidates in just a moment. But first, this evening, we've got a great panel joining us tonight, live on the radio and on video stream, to share their insights about Election Night 2020. So pleased to welcome our regular contributor, Charles Griggs. Hi, Charles.
Good evening, Melissa.
Good evening. Matt Corrigan, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at JU, author and political analyst. Matt, good evening to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Chris Hand is with us. He's an attorney, author, and former chief of staff to Jacksonville Mayor Alvin Brown. Chris, great to have you with us.
Happy election night, Melissa.
Happy election night. And rounding out our first panel, Mario DeCunto, past chair of the mayor's Hispanic American Advisory Board. Mario, so pleased you could be with us.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. I appreciate it.
And again, it's 549-2937. Give us a call. In a few minutes, we'll check in with the local Republican and Democratic Party headquarters and see what the mood is there. But first, let's get into it, everyone. Charles Griggs, let's begin with you. As we surpassed 74% turnout in Duval County alone today, with the polls just closing, that gives you a sense of just how sky-high enthusiasm is on this election night. The story of Duval County has been fascinating to watch, as we did see local Democrats outpacing Republicans in Duval by about 11,000 votes today and overall. That said, turnout in the surrounding counties, St. John's, Nassau, also incredibly high, even higher than Duval County. And so since Florida is a game of margins for both President Trump and Joe Biden, as we look at these early numbers, what do you think about the margins here in our part of the state and how it will either help or hurt these two men's chances?
Well, I think one of the things that we can all bank on is that these margins are incredibly difficult to explain. I mean, what we're looking at here is, like you mentioned, this is a very important, turnout is very important in elections like this, but the margins here are very difficult to read at this point in time. The analytics on this is going to be interesting after it's all said and done, because as you remember back in 2018, we saw Duval County go blue and people were ecstatic about that. But then when we came to the mayoral election, it wasn't that much excitement. Now this is tremendous excitement around the presidential election. A lot is at stake here, but the margins are just too iffy. Even with an 11,000 vote margin for the Democrats, you still can't call it for them in these particular races and under these particular circumstances, because down to the wire, anything can happen.
Yeah, Matt Corrigan, as Charles noted, Duval County did go blue in 2018 for gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum. He did lose statewide, of course, to our Governor Ron DeSantis. But there's been a lot of national attention paid to Jacksonville this election cycle, because it's a city whose demographics are changing, and it is trending more blue. It's been fascinating to watch candidates paying attention to this part of the state. Of course, President Trump has been here, or surrogates for him, multiple times in the last several weeks and months. Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, came to Jacksonville, touched down a couple of weeks ago. And with Florida's 29 electoral votes up for grabs, we've been saying this quite a bit on this show and on our air in recent weeks. If we get a decisive result in Florida fairly early in the evening, that could tell the tale for this entire election. We might have a decisive result tonight, right, Matt, rather than having to wait days or weeks to know who won this election.
Yeah, I think we'll know. I have a good idea tonight, but this is going to be very close if the turnout numbers are really representative. And remember, these are just turnout numbers; they're not voting numbers, so we don't know how people voted. It's a decent margin for Democrats in Duval County. We'll have to see how the MPAs voted. That's really kind of, I think, been lost in some of this analysis. That the MPAs are probably going to decide the state and may decide what happens in the city. And so as we move forward for the rest of the night, we're going to have to look at the entire state. Broward County is having great turnout. That's good for Democrats. But places like Sumter County and Collier County are through the roof for Republicans. So that's probably good for Republicans. So to me, the question for the rest of the night is how many Republicans crossed over to vote for Biden? And what are the MPAs doing? Are they breaking a particular way? If they break for Biden, Biden can still win the state. If they are kind of really even or go for Trump, Trump's going to do it.
Chris Hand, based on the numbers I saw just before we went on the air, Republicans have a raw vote total advantage so far around Florida of about 2%. That said, as Matt pointed out, NPA voters, which are about a third of the pie, tend to be decisive in this state, and how they break will tell the tale.
Well, I think that's exactly right, both statewide and locally, Melissa. As you say, Democrats left the early voting period with about 110,000 vote advantage statewide. Republicans erased that by about midday today, and as you say, took a lead going into at the end of ballots. But I think that margin question is also important here for Duval County. Just remember, 4 years ago, Republicans had a several hundred vote margin coming out of the election day totals and ended up winning the county by a pretty small margin, several thousand votes. The change from that to today, when Democrats have about an 11,000 vote margin at the end of voting, and polling would suggest that NPAs are going to break in the direction of Vice President Biden and Senator Harris, suggests that this may be the first election since Jimmy Carter in 1976 that a Democratic presidential candidate wins Duval County.
If that happens, Mario DeCunto, that will be a remarkable shift for Jacksonville and Duval County, and one reflective of the way this community has changed over the years. More transplants moving into this area, more college-educated voters, a lot of younger voters in Jacksonville. It's a young city, and it's an increasingly diverse city. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of the Hispanic vote in Florida, both in this region and all over the state. Of course, the Cuban vote in South Florida gets a lot of national attention. Puerto Rican voters in Central Florida can also really be influential in presidential cycles. But the Latino vote in Florida is diverse, and it's not monolithic. And increasingly in North Florida, it is showing its presence. And so what are your thoughts about how this vote will affect the outcome?
That's right, Melissa. You actually mentioned so many important points. The Hispanic vote in Florida has grown. We are now 2.5 million registered voters, making up 17% of the total voters here. And here in Duval, we are up to 38,000, which is about 5.7% of the votes. And population-wise, talking to my friends in the census, we have now broken the 10% mark here in Jacksonville. So that's extremely exciting. That means that we're really beginning to figure on the numbers, and that's really what people are looking at. And for that reason, we've been seeing a huge focus on Florida. One of the biggest focuses, why are people now nationally focusing on Florida, and especially the Hispanic community? You don't even know how many texts I've gotten from the past month or so. I probably get about 5 to 6 texts a day asking me from different groups if I voted, when I'm going to vote, where I need to vote. People are focusing on us, or maybe it's just me. I don't know, but
maybe they just really like you, Mario.
I guess they do. My phone is. I just might as well just turn it off. I can't even use it anymore. But right now we are we are now the national focus because we are the largest Latino electorate of all the battleground states. We have the largest Latino electorate right now. And so of all the other states, to say, well, there's more Hispanics in California and Texas, true. But right now, we have the largest percentage among all Floridians. We're 24% of Florida right now, which is huge because we've grown just in the past 20 years. That's jumped up almost 10%. And it's exciting because, unfortunately, I don't like hurricanes, but thanks to Hurricane Maria, we did get a nice group of 130,000 Puerto Ricans moving So like you were saying, this is not your grandpa's, Hispanic, group anymore. We're not just Cubans in Florida. 44% of Hispanics here in Florida are either South American or other groups, and then the other 27% are Puerto Ricans, and leaving 29% Cubans. So, it's a very diverse group with different backgrounds, and all are eager to express their vote. So we're looking forward to those numbers.
And speaking of numbers, give us a call on this historic election night. We'll go to your calls in a moment at 549-2937 as we wait for the first numbers to come in. We have live reports from across the region, beginning with our own Sky LeBron. He is at the Duval County Republican headquarters watch party at the Downtown Hyatt Hotel. Sky, of course, the big push in this city was for Duval Republicans to hold the county for President Trump, but there were a number of local races that they're watching as well. Tell us what you're hearing from the group there.
Yeah, hey, Melissa. There's been a lot of optimism in the early going. At Fox News, throughout the main ballroom where everybody is located, they've been cheering when they've seen the early results for different states, including Florida, which has very, very, very early polling numbers. And the other thing is that there are not a lot of people on right now. They have masks on. I have a mask on right now. But many people here, and it's starting to get crowded as more people start to fill in. It's gone.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for that. And I look forward to hearing more from you later in the evening. That's our Sky LeBron live from the Duval Republican headquarters downtown. Charles Griggs, in a moment, we'll hear from our Brendan Rivers at the local Democratic watch party on Dunn Avenue. And it's my understanding that gathering is a drive-in rally where people can stay masked and distanced and in their cars. So this is indicative of how these two parties and how these two presidential campaigns have conducted gatherings in Florida throughout this election season. We have seen big outdoor rallies for President Trump in this area where folks did pack in tightly even though they were outdoors, and most of the attendees weren't wearing masks. That was contrasted with the events that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris conducted in this state, where they limited attendance, had everyone in their cars, and strictly enforced masking and social distancing. And that has been remarkable to see the difference, given that in the middle of this pandemic, with numbers continuing to rise, the way these candidates and campaigns handled the virus expressed itself in the way they sought Floridians' votes. And how do you see this affecting the outcome here in the Sunshine State?
Well, yeah, people have definitely drawn the lines along the areas of how science is recommending we deal with COVID-19. And some people believe that it's a more practical way to deal with it versus behind the science, and the ideology behind both of that has turned into, political battlegrounds. And I've mentioned several times, Melissa, I worked in public health for 15 years, and never have I once seen politics really play a role in how people deal with outbreaks and pandemics. But here we are. What we found is that there are two different ways of dealing with the pandemic. One is through what the science says to do, and the other one is what people believe are their rights. And that has played a big role in how this election is going to play out. How people feel about the pandemic, how they feel about loved ones who've been impacted in their families and their jobs as well. That is showing up at the ballot box, and that is showing up in polling as well. So it'll be interesting to see as we get deeper into the evening, what side of this pandemic people are feeling like they're on. The polling says that people believe that the pandemic has not been handled favorably. But at the same time, you think that there are still people who believe that there are other ways to do outside of the traditional public health ways of treating a pandemic. So
sure.
We're looking forward to seeing how that goes.
And I want to give some numbers just coming into the Duval County Supervisor of Elections website. These are early. I caution everyone, these are not decisive. But early reporting from Supervisor of Elections Mike Hogan for Duval County shows an early lead for Joe Biden in this county over President Trump, 53 to 44%. Congressman John Rutherford about 9 points ahead so far of his challenger, Donna Deegan, in Duval County. In a closely watched race between Republican Wyman Duggan and Democrat Tamiette Thomas in a swing district, State Representative District 15 is tight as a drum, with Duggan up over Thomas by about a point. So that is one to watch. The Duval County Clerk of Courts race with Republican Jody Phillips facing off against Democrat Jimmy Midyett shows the Democrat Midyett ahead. This is early, though, by a couple of points. And then another race we're watching for the Jacksonville City Council, District 4, Republican Kevin Carrico against Democrat Nicole Ham. Carrico is up on Ham by a sliver, barely under a point. So we will keep watching those as we go through the evening. But Matt Corrigan, that gives you a sense of how much more competitive the Democratic Party has become in Duval County this cycle. Those races we will be watching closely, and they could turn, but that's where they are right now.
Yeah, and I think everyone has to caution where the votes coming from, or these early votes, et cetera, because it matters the method of voting, because that's been so partisan. And so, as we get more and more votes in, we can kind of help determine that. But I think your point is right. What the Democrats have shown in this cycle is, really, and I think Chris has said this before, is being in the arena this time. In other words, for every particular race, or most races, Democrats have fielded someone and also funded them or gotten outside funding. That has not been the case. I live in District 4. Usually that's been fought among Republicans. Nicole Ham's come in and made it a very competitive race. And so, I think we are seeing a lot more competition, and we're seeing a lot more money behind the Democratic Party than we've seen in recent years.
We have some early numbers on the Duval County half-cent sales tax referendum for local school repair and construction. Early results in Duval, but so far it's 68% for, 31% against. That measure does look likely to pass. In Clay County, another half-cent sales tax referendum is on the ballot. 56% voting it up against 43% down. So that one looks to be heading to passage. We'll follow that, though, and let's go quickly to WJCT's Brendan Rivers, live from the Duval County Dems watch party along Dunn Avenue. Brendan, as we have been discussing, this is a drive-in rally for the poll watchers there. What are you observing?
So people are still kind of slowly filing in. There's several dozen cars, it looks like. The cars actually appear to be social distance. There's space between each of the cars. There's a few people kind of wandering around talking. Pretty much everyone's wearing a mask. There's some food trucks here. There's a DJ. So it looks like they're gearing up for a good time tonight.
Yeah, and so it's a game of margins, and we'll have to see whether the Democrats can hold their margins in this community, which they seem to be on track to having a good night, but it's early. So, we're going to have to watch this closely. I want to thank you, Brendan, for joining us from that watch party. And Mario DeCunto, these results are coming in slowly in Duval. At the same time, I want to let folks know that in St. Johns County, how about this, Mario? 84% of eligible voters in St. Johns County have cast a ballot. 84%. Simply amazing to watch democracy in action with this sky-high enthusiasm and voter turnout on this election night, isn't it?
That's amazing. I've been hearing numbers like that, and just in the whole country in general. I believe that I think we already surpassed all of our total ballots cast just with early voting yesterday. I think they were telling us. So it's really nationally. These two people, somehow Biden and Trump, have just really inspired folks to join in and just express ourselves right now. There's just so many things on the line for so many people, and unfortunately they've turned it into so many black and white issues. And I think what they don't really realize is that everybody really just wants the same things, and somehow the parties have found ways to just sort of get people on edge and almost putting neighbor against neighbor, which is just one of the strangest things I've ever seen. So I'm sure we're all looking forward to this being over and being able to move on for the next 4 years.
Yeah, Mario and Charles Griggs, this is the most divisive, bitterly felt, contentious election that I think most of us have ever lived through. And yes, people will be glad when it's over. Whether we can easily move on as a nation, depending on who wins this election, is another matter. But it is a uniquely fraught election for a number of reasons. And I know that's something you have thought a lot about.
Yeah, certainly, Melissa. This election is bringing on a tremendous amount of anxiety for most Americans. We have, for the last several years, and even before Donald Trump was elected, have been a divided country. And I think there are fractions of this country that are looking for ways for the country to heal, and there are fractions of this country looking for ways for it to continue to progress forward in ways that they see are positive. But here we are, and we hope that after tonight's results, both sides will be put in a position where they can receive the results and move on. We hope and pray that that will happen, but there's a lot of anxiety going on because of all of the tensions around the issues. There are several issues that are very contentious, race-related issues. There are employment issues, and we talked about COVID-19. This nation is going to have a long way to go before it heals, but this is America, and we know how to get it done.
I want to go to you quickly, Chris Hand, as I'm following numbers coming in on the New York Times election tracker website. With an estimated 41% of numbers reporting. They're looking at President Trump up a couple of points in Florida, but in two other very important states, Georgia and North Carolina. Biden is up just slightly, 0.3, less than a point in Georgia, and up 2 in North Carolina. And the analysis is interesting. In this analysis, their best guess, it's early, but their best guess is that the president will take Florida but lose Georgia and North Carolina, and that if that occurs, a decisive victory for Joe Biden is likely. The president would need a big surprise to hang on. So let's talk for just a minute about Florida and Georgia. It might seem counterintuitive to some folks, Chris, but we could see a result tonight where President Trump wins Florida but loses the state of Georgia.
Well, Melissa, as you say, if President Trump loses, 2 out of those 3 states, perhaps wins Florida but loses Georgia and North Carolina, his path back to the White House is extremely narrow at that point. Let's not forget that Georgia has evolved into a very close state. Just like Florida was, there was a very tightly contested governor's race there in 2018, which was decided by a very small margin. But Melissa, speaking of early returns, I think it bears some focus on these early returns from Jacksonville, because those are mostly early votes by mail. There are 665,000 registered voters in Florida, in Duval County. 71% of those, which is the turnout, is about 472,000 voters. Those early returns account for about 400,000 votes. So the bulk of the vote here is in Duval County, and Joe Biden has about a 9-point lead. And of course, you talked about some of those other races as well. So I did want to emphasize the importance of those early results because they constitute the vast majority of the votes that we're going to see in Duval County. Of course, those votes that are coming in from Election Day will certainly have an impact on those races that are closer, but for Joe Biden to be in a position where he's got a 9-point lead with 400 of the 475,000 votes that have been cast already counted certainly speaks to the possibility that he may well win Duval County. And again, knowing that Florida is still out there, we don't know what the final result is going to be for the entire Sunshine State just yet.
That's right. Mario, quickly before we break, we don't know the final result, although the early numbers are showing a slight tilt toward President Trump.
Yes, and of course, you know, the numbers are still being counted, and we have a lot of votes that need to be counted at paper ballots, you know, the mail-in votes. So, you know, we hope that, you know, that we'll get those done, and hopefully within a normal amount of time, and, you know, we can all kind of get some closure.
Exactly right. And with that, I want to thank you, Mario DeCuno, past chair of the Mayor's Hispanic American Advisory Board, attorney Chris Hand, author and former chief of staff to Mayor Alvin Brown, and Matt Corrigan, political analyst, author, and dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at Jacksonville University. Guys, so appreciate you hopping on with us this evening on this important night in American history. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right, we're going to take a very short break and then continue our coverage with a few new voices as we continue WJCT's special coverage of Election Night 2020. Stay with us. And welcome back to WJCT's special live extended coverage of Election Night 2020. I'm Melissa Ross. Thanks so much for being with us on this historic evening as we continue our discussion around this extraordinary election. We continue now with our regular contributor, Charles Griggs. Charles, good to have you back.
Glad to be here, Melissa.
Also joining us, former Jacksonville Mayor and UNF President, John Delaney. Hi, John. Good evening.
Hey, Melissa. Good evening.
Writer and journalist Nikisha Williams is with us. Nikisha, great to have you with us.
Hi, Melissa. Good evening.
Yes, and Daniel Cronrath, professor of political science at FSCJ. Daniel, thanks for being on the panel.
Hey, thanks, Melissa.
And it's 549-2937 to share your election thoughts with us. And let's talk about some numbers coming in now, both local and national. John Delaney, I'd like to begin with you as former mayor, UNF president. We've got a majority of precincts reporting, and statewide, the numbers show that President Trump is likely to win Florida, although we don't have a definitive result yet. In Duval County, he is losing, actually, by about 5 points. Down in Duval to Joseph Biden. If these numbers hold, Biden would be the first Democrat to win Duval County in 44 years. since the Carter administration. That said, if he wins Duval County, it doesn't mean he's going to win the state of Florida. So as we watch those numbers come in, what's your reaction?
Well, I think both you and I separately had predicted that Biden was going to win Duval County. Andrew Gillum, the Democrat, won the governor's vote out of Duval County as well. The surrounding counties, of course, are far more conservative, and that's roughly a third of the population, and St. John's, Clay, et cetera. So Florida, the polls had been showing, somewhat to my surprise, that it had been tending to go with Trump. For Donald Trump, he's got to skip the South, and then he's got to hope for Pennsylvania. That's probably his cleanest path to try to pull it off, unless there's a pretty big upset in the upper Midwest. But, you know, nobody has won with the national polls this far apart, with about 10 points apart, down 10 points. Nobody's really been able to pull that off. He throws all the norms out as he did in 2016, so it's going to be a fun evening.
Certainly is. And as we continue to watch those numbers, Nikisha Williams, I want to talk about a local race, the Duval County Clerk of Courts race between Republican Jody Phillips and Democrat Jimmy Midyett is on a knife's edge. Just over a point separates these candidates. That is much tighter than that kind of race might have been in years past. And it's reflective of the divide that we are seeing in America, because some of that race turned on culture war issues. What are your thoughts about that race?
It's absolutely a culture war issue, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the two candidates' stance differing on, gay marriage. And at this point, it's about, whether or not the Duval County Courthouse, depending upon who wins, will be opened back up to having not only just you can get your marriage certificate there, but you can actually get married in the courthouse. They have that some type of multi-purpose room in there. And so it's a cultural thing, and it's also a shift in ideology and that ever move to the left that you would see on this type of issue, because it wouldn't be a closely watched race if that was not the key issue at the center of the race.
Let's get back. Let's zoom the picture out a little bit. Daniel Cronrath of FSCJ, with more numbers coming in, it's looking more and more likely that President Trump will carry Florida and its 29 electoral votes. Georgia, just to our north, is very slightly tilting President Trump's way, although we need more numbers there. And then another important state, North Carolina, tilting toward Joe Biden. And I'm going off the New York Times analysis as they put their needles on those three states, with Joe Biden winning one of the three. A Biden win is likely. The president, though, would need to pull out a couple of states in the Midwest to keep his chances alive. But the bottom line, the president needs Florida to win, and he does look likely to win it. Joe Biden does not need Florida to win to get to that number of 270 electoral votes. That's where we are right now. It's 7:30 in the evening. President Trump does appear to be going toward a path to victory in Florida. Daniel.
Yeah, Melissa, the calculus here for President Trump was very, very tight. He needed to duplicate kind of what was really an election day miracle that he turned out in 2016, where he won states like Florida, he won Georgia, he won North Carolina, and then he was able to flip the traditional Rust Belt states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan to his favor. This is, with Florida going to Trump, if President Trump were to lose Georgia and North Carolina early in the evening, it really kind of represents the end of the night for Donald Trump. Because at that point, it doesn't really matter. If you were to play with the Real Clear Politics map or some of the other maps that have been out there, and you did any of the calculations relative to the states that Donald Trump had to win, it's kind of simple. He could not afford to lose Georgia and North Carolina, delegate-rich states, not as rich as Florida, mind you, but delegate-rich states that he really had to carry if he was going to try to replicate any of that, the magic that he had in 2016. And I think a lot of this really, Melissa, at the end of the day is, this election comes down, even with the results locally, This election was a referendum on Donald Trump. It really is going to be, that's what's going to be said at the end of the night. And I think in a lot of these local Duval County Democratic races, I think a lot of candidates are going to be benefiting from the fact that while in 2018 Andrew Gillum may have generated enthusiasm among Democrats, nobody generates enthusiasm among Democrats like Donald J. Trump.
Charles Griggs, as we're getting more numbers coming in, what are your thoughts about this? As we're seeing Florida and likely Georgia, although we need more numbers coming in from Georgia, going the president's way.
Well, he's supposed to win Florida and he's supposed to win Georgia. The president is supposed to take those states. But as you recall, 4 years ago, it was the surprise in Pennsylvania and Michigan that drove everyone crazy about this election. So those numbers are the ones that I think the people are keeping a strong eye on, because those are areas that the president delivered that were really, really unexpected. So what we're looking for here tonight, it would be very surprising if he did not win Florida. But Florida has put up a good fight. The Democrats put up a good fight, but it's just too much stacked against them in Florida, apparently. But it's still early. And but my eyes are up there in the Midwest and see what's going on in Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
We have Congressman Al Lawson, North Florida Congressman Al Lawson, calling into the show right now as we look at these returns. Representative Lawson, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And you do appear to be on pace to easily win re-election this evening over challenger Gary Adler. Congratulations to you. I want to get your thoughts about the election in general. As we've been discussing, Florida looks to be in the bag, although it's not over yet, for President Trump. As a Democrat, how do you see your candidate, Joe Biden, carving out a path to victory tonight to get to 270 electoral votes?
Well, I know it's a little bit early in Florida, and it was always about a 50-50 chance. And every time you look at the polling, one would lead by 2 points, the other one would lead by 3 points in the margin of error. And I think the pathway is what's going to happen in Midwest. When you get into Wisconsin and Ohio, and Michigan, I think those are very key areas. And also it depends on what happens in Georgia. So Georgia and Florida will basically kind of trending the same way. So there's a real, everybody would like the 29 electoral votes that we have here in Florida. And so it's going to be interesting to see, when a lot more results come in from the I-4 corridor and in Dave Broward in Palm Beach, even though I know that I heard when I was driving in tonight, that he was doing well in Pinellas, which Pinellas is always trend Republican.
And let me ask you about the U.S. House of Representatives. The Senate could go either way, although Democrats are slightly favored to flip the Senate blue. The House is expected to gain some more seats tonight. And so how do you see that affecting the workflow and the priorities for the House?
Well, I think that, we passed this past year about 365 bills, and they all have been sitting in the Senate. So that will increase our numbers, which means that we can get legislation out. The biggest obstacle to everything is what is going to happen in the Senate. It would be great that we was able to flip the Senate due to the fact that there's a lot of things that should have taken place. For example, is the HEROES Act. When you travel through the district, they really need help. We really need a good COVID package, to the way America is trending and even trending in Florida. And people are hurting and they need assistance because it was some of the people believe that this pandemic will be going away when it got hard, all the things that you heard the president talking about, but it's not. It's with us, and it's going to be a while before the pandemic is over because people are practicing social distancing, So it is incredibly important if we pick up more seats in the Senate, even if we don't come back to the majority, is they might be much more willing to negotiate, because what has happened has been very hard to get a lot of things out because the Senate just won't take them up. And so the president brags sometime about some of the issues that in the crime bill, and all these other things, but really it was orchestrated in the House, passed the Senate. The only thing the president had to do is sign it into law. But on the campaign trail, he's taking credit for a great deal, and also he's taking credit for the status of the economy right now, because the economy, he's saying that, look what I've done, I've taken care of the economy. But what the number one issue among everybody is this health care issue, because people are dying, over 200,000 people are losing their life because of this COVID. And so as a result, that's what people want. People want to live, they want the vaccine to be developed, and so that they can get on with their lives. And I think that's one of the things that is happening, as you see, all across America.
Certainly is, and I want to thank you for calling in tonight, North Florida Representative Al Lawson, CD5. Congressman, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, and be safe, and we see what happens the rest of the night.
We'll see what happens. I do want to caution some of the numbers we've been talking about for Florida are early. We don't have a result yet, so we will keep bringing you updated numbers as we get them. Nikisha Williams, as we just heard him say, coronavirus has been the issue this election, along with the economy, and how it will all shake out at the end of the night or tomorrow, we'll have to see. But it has affected every aspect of this campaign.
Very much so. And it doesn't matter who wins the presidency, whether Donald Trump gets 4 more years or Joe Biden is sworn in January. Coronavirus isn't going anywhere. The pandemic isn't going anywhere. And I think people really need to realize that no matter who becomes our next commander-in-chief, their first priority will need to be focusing on getting this virus under control, ushering forth a vaccine that is widely available to the American public, and then also rebuilding the economy that, even though it's on a rebound, there are still 11 million people in this country without jobs, and that is unacceptable. So it doesn't matter who wins. It matters about what they're going to do next to tackle these very real issues that we are facing right now today.
That's right, John Delaney. This has been such a challenging time for millions and millions of Americans. And, you think of the massive issues around developing a vaccine, figuring out how to extend unemployment benefits for people. The coronavirus and economic relief stimulus package, the new one that Congress still can't come to terms on. I mean, these challenges are huge.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I don't think that anybody can really say they've been handled well, all the pandemic-related issues. And frankly, probably in most states when you really get down to it as well. Some of the counter-argument would be, could anybody else have done any better? Certainly some messaging across the country about masking and avoiding contact, et cetera. It clearly would have been better from a national level, even though they're really state and local health provisions that allow mayors and governors to act. But it's a topsy-turvy time, and it looks like, from judging from the messages that campaigns were sending, who weighs the pandemic handling more than the economy handling. And that at the end is going to be the postmortem, how many voters weighed one over the other. But when you get down to it, it's a state-by-state battle. And if Donald Trump loses one of the major southern states, maybe North Carolina, the road to win is almost impossible unless he gets Pennsylvania in a surprise in one of those Rust Belt states.
I want to note that the Associated Press has called a local race. Republican Congressman John Rutherford has defeated his Democratic challenger, Donna Deegan. That race is called. In Jacksonville, a local race we've been watching for District 4 City Council, Republican Kevin Carrico has defeated Democrat Nicole Ham with 53% of the vote. Daniel Cronrath, those are two that we've been watching. There are some other numbers still coming in on that half-cent sales tax referendum. That looks likely to pass. for schools in both Duval and Clay counties. Daniel, those are some of the high-profile contests we've been watching. What else is on your radar?
Well, I think I'm glad that you pointed those out, Melissa. Looking at right now at the results for the local Democrats, it appears that Joe Biden, of course, is going to carry Duval County. It doesn't look like any right now, based upon the early returns. The other folks who are Democrats, Nicole Ham looks like she's trailing behind. Ms. Thomas, Jimmy Mediette look like they're falling back. I think the one thing that I would say that has really excited me this election cycle is some of the energy which has been put out there by soil and water conservation candidate Ashante Green. And it looks like her hard work in the urban core here of Jacksonville, working for her seat, and that is going to be rewarded tonight. I think one of the big things that's going to be the takeaway is that this is going to be the first time Duval County has come back to the Democratic Party in a presidential election, I believe since the election of Jimmy Carter. So if this becomes a trend, Duval County and Jacksonville could become an integral part into the changing landscape of Florida. Does Florida get more competitive, or does Duval County kind of become an outlier as the rest of the state becomes more conservative? And I think the last thing that I'm watching tonight, Melissa, is the role of the no party affiliation voters. That 3.6 million of them now in Florida, and it's really difficult. Obviously, folks like Mike Vender and others do a really good job with our polling here statewide, St. Pete. But, when you've got this many people now in Florida which are basically saying, we're dissatisfied with the two-party system as it is, we're going to register NPA, that creates a lot of uncertainty in terms of how these elections are going to turn out in a predictable manner.
Yeah, absolutely right. Charles, the NPA voter in Florida makes about a third of the pie. And it's interesting to look at these numbers. As Daniel said, Joe Biden is probably going to win Duval County, the first time this county has picked a Democrat for president since Jimmy Carter walked into the White House in 1976. But that said, it looks like there's some ticket splitting going on in our area, with folks picking Biden at the top of their ticket, but voting Republican down ballot.
Yeah, it certainly does, Melissa. It looks like those, not only that, but those non-party affiliate representatives are out there being very independent about the way they think about how they're going to vote, the issues. Many of them, obviously, this is the second time we've had a race that for on the national level that the Democrat, Duval went blue, but some of the down ticket candidates did not do well. You recall back in 2018, we had, tax collector, and that race was lost. I think Mia Jones and Mike Corden was there, and that race was lost, even though it was countywide. So here we are, and Biden's carrying, looks like he's going to carry Duval County, yet Jimmy Mediette could not carry the seat for supervisor or clerk of courts.
Right. I want to take a minute, Nikisha, to talk about the ballot amendments Florida voters are deciding tonight. Amendment 2, the raising of the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Only 11% of the vote is in on this. But as of right now, it is at 63% yes on raising the minimum wage. It's above the 60% threshold. Again, this is early in the going, but this is something that has been, I think, out of all the ballot amendments, people have been watching that one the most closely. What are your thoughts about Amendment 2 right now?
I think it's just a testament of what is needed to allow people to have an actual life in this country. You can't live on less than $15 an hour, on $7 an hour working minimum wage. You have to work 2 minimum wage jobs to be able to afford rent in this county. And so to see that happening statewide, and we're one of the more conservative counties when it comes to rent prices, to see that happening statewide, it's just not feasible. So people are really going out there to speak up and tell the government of Florida that, hey, we need to be able to have not just a working wage, but a living wage.
It's definitely been a lively discussion around this amendment. Out of all of the ones that are on the ballot, and it's a big ballot because voters have had to wade through all of those measures. And if you are just tuning in, it's our special election night coverage here on 89.9, streaming on our WJCT Facebook page, and we'll also have updates tonight on WJCT television with local races coming in now across the region. I want to touch briefly on St. Johns County because we have some numbers coming in there. State Representative Cindy Stevenson in District 17 appears likely to win her race against Democrat Dave Rogers. So that's another one that we've been following. And so, John Delaney, you've been through a lot of election nights, quite a few. And we've gone over so many of the issues and candidates. What's on your radar that we haven't touched on so far?
Well, I think you've hit them well. A race like Cindy Stevens, it's a gerrymandered seat. You can pretty much tell if they're gerrymandered, how they're drawn in favor of one party or the other. The down ballot tickets in Duval County, if Biden is not dragging those along, odds are that's about money that the Republican candidate probably was able to out-advertise some of the others. The clerk's race, the Jimmy Midyett, I was wondering if there was going to be a reaction to the negative advertising in that race by the Republican candidate. That occasionally happens. Negative by and large works. But every now and then the public gets disgusted with the negative ad. As for the minimum wage, a lot of these amendments, you kind of can get a feel. It sounds like something the public's going to like. There's not a lot of debate, not a lot of information. Kind of the counter argument on that is it's going to make businesses hire fewer people because they can't afford to pay that. But it's phased in over time, and it's just your heart goes out to say somebody can't live on a minimum wage. Unless you're living in a house full of people and everybody's chipping in. So far, things look fairly predictable at the state level.
Yeah. And before we wrap this up, Charles Griggs, we began with you. We'll end with you. What are you watching most closely tonight? Oh, we might not have Charles. The perils of doing this socially distanced. Let's try one more time. Hey, Charles.
I'm here.
Your final thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at the house and sales tax and see how that worked. Obviously, it looks like it's going to pass. Voters overwhelmingly do support the way the district is approaching improving the schools in the area, as well as in Clay County. But, again, Duval going blue for Vice President Biden is also something that's really interesting in the city, because Jacksonville has had Republicans have had a real stronghold on Jacksonville, and what we've seen here over time is that our politics is normally somewhere in the middle, and so this is maybe indicative of how Jacksonville can look in the future and maybe move back and forth across the party line.
I think that's right. And I want to thank all of you so much for being with us. Charles Griggs, John Delaney, Nikisha Williams, and Daniel Cronrath. Thanks for sharing some of this momentous evening with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, great job.
And have a great evening. And that concludes our special program. Keep it right here on 89.9 as we continue with NPR's complete coverage of election night. We'll bring you local updates on the radio throughout the evening, on our video stream on Facebook, and also on WJCT television. And of course, we'll be right back here again at 9 a.m. tomorrow with some more updates. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.